Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to get ready to begin the service. If you could please take a moment to silence your cell phones. Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you for being here. My name is Jeremy. I'll be leading us in this service. And when we do services, I always make sure I say leading the service because I'm not here to talk to you or preach or any of those other words you hear sometimes. We're just here to have a conversation, and I'm going to have a chance to lead that. So we're going to start with prayer just to begin it. And then what we're going to do, just so you all know, is Bob's going to come up and speak. But after he's done, we're going to give you all the opportunity not to come up here because I know that freaks everybody out at a funeral. But where you're sitting right there, I just want you to think about it. If there's a couple little adjectives or attributes you might want to say about Mike and what he meant to you or a short little story, that's going to be an opportunity for you to do that. I tell you now because now you have no excuse because you have time to think about it. And I promise I also won't do the teacher thing and stare at you and make eye contact and try to get you to, I won't do any of that stuff. But I want you to think about it because I know some people aren't comfortable coming up here to a podium and actually speaking because it's very official, but there's something special you might want to share. Maybe it's just, he was funny. I don't know what it is. But so I want to give you a chance to do that. So I'm giving you fair warning. Okay, so we're all on the same page. Okay, so let's go ahead and begin with prayer. God, we come before you and we ask that you would help us today. Be with each person who does speak, each person who's here to just be a part of this ceremony and this saying goodbye, but all in a sad moment and sad time, but also a time to remember, a time to reflect. I pray that you'd help each of us to gain some healing from this, give us comfort, help us to comfort each other, encourage each other, and just make this a day that is more special than we really plan on it being. And we thank you for that, and we just pray the blessings on this. And we pray. Amen. So, Bob, you can go and come on up.
Thank you all for coming here to remember my dad, Mike Baldwin. My dad had many admirable qualities. He was supportive of friends, generous within his means, and always social. He had a variety of passions. He was a lifelong scout, loved music, found a career in marketing, and enjoyed watching rocket launches. My dad meant different things to different people, which made it hard for me to know where to start today. What common aspect would everyone know here have seen from my dad? Well, I thought I would start by explaining something a bit quirky about him, something he always carried with him, but some may not have fully appreciated. His backpack. Let's see right there. No matter where he went, you would likely see my dad with his backpack. Working, camping, shopping, traveling, going out with friends, or visiting family. He almost always had his backpack with him. Whenever he was asked why he had his backpack, he would often allude to the Boy Scout motto, just saying, well, you got to be prepared. In his backpack, he would have anything he might need. Business cards, in case he met a potential new client, a handkerchief, in case he needed to wipe his nose, a bottle of iced tea, in case he got thirsty. But between us, I felt like he used the phrase, be prepared, as somewhat of an excuse to overpack. And he regularly had pretty strange things in there, like a full-size American flag and a squeaky alligator toy. So, in remembering him today, I wanted to make sure we all followed his lead. Before the service, I put out some envelopes on the different tables, and these envelopes include various things to help make sure you're prepared for today. You're all welcome to open those now, grab the spares if you wish. Feel free to, take them, move around, it's okay. Now, there's some obvious things that you might want at any funeral. Tissues, sanitizing wipes, Advil, a Band-Aid just in case. And since he also advocated for leave no trace principle from scouting, there's a small trash bag in there so you don't leave any refuse behind. Each envelope also has a face mask. He was a big believer in wearing masks for safety during the pandemic. So thank you all for wearing masks today. It's what he would have wanted. And some of the masks have some silly prints on them. And because I believe he would have wanted us to laugh together. Thank you for wearing this. To be honest, it'll help me keep my composure up here, so thanks. Yeah, great. They all have filters in them if you want to trade your mask, but if you want a double mask, that's great too. In these envelopes, there are also two pieces of paper. One is his obituary, in case I forget something up here. The other is a map to where he'll be buried later today. That's in case you want to come see him today after the service, or if you wanted to come visit him in the future, which I know he would appreciate. Lastly, there's a couple of scratch-off tickets in each of the envelopes with quarters to play now or later. Hope this helps you have a little fun today while also being prepared. Feel free to use, wear, or play with these items as I continue. So, in thinking about how to honor my dad today, I wanted to share how he taught me so many lessons. Some lessons he taught me through the way that he lived. For example, he always wanted to have fun, even if it meant breaking with tradition. With this in mind, you should feel comfortable today smiling or laughing at the service. Even though it's uncommon at a funeral, he would be happy to know you had a little bit of fun. See some nods, so yeah. Some lessons he taught me were about what not to do. For example, he sunk thousands of dollars into the Florida Lotto drawings, like Play 5 and Mega Millions. When buying tickets, he would tell me two things. First, he would joke that he was contributing to my college fund, referring to a Florida scholarship that I later used, that was supposedly funded through state lotto. Number two, he said, never pick your numbers, because if they ever win on a week that you took a break, you'll regret it forever. So besides lotto drawings, though, whenever he would get a lotto ticket, I would ask him for a scratch-off, and fondly remember playing those as a kid. They still feel like harmless fun to me, so that's why I included a couple of those in each of the envelopes. And by the way, there's a couple of spares up front if anybody wants to grab them. I think maybe in the back. Some lessons he taught me through direct advice. For example, he told my sister and I, do what you love. He encouraged me to learn about computers and my sister to follow her passion in art. My dad was our biggest fans and was always so proud of anything that we did. In fact, early in my childhood, my dad was the one that introduced me to computers. He taught me the DOS commands that I needed to play Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. He opened up his 386 and 686 computers, pointed out different components and what they do. And these are my two earliest memories of interacting with computers. So, and then later as a teenager, my dad got me an account with my very first social network, AOL. While I stopped using it long ago, my dad was an unusually loyal customer of AOL. Since the 90s until now, he always used the email address bulkmailus@aol.com. While he only taught me the basics, it helped spark a curiosity in me from which I built my whole career. I have just two more things to share about my dad today. First is the impact of his vices on me. And finally, some tributes in his honor that we've done. So, in growing up, my dad, I realized my dad wasn't perfect, and he knew it too. The way that he acknowledged this was by saying, "Do as I say, not as I do." Ashley knows. She heard it too. And he said it so much. It was annoying at the time, to be honest. But looking back now, it's how he taught me some of the biggest lessons of all. Let's start with the obvious one. He drank to excess very frequently. This ultimately led to his liver failure and his death last week. But he told me, "Do as I say, not as I do." So while I like drinking whiskey, I currently only drink like once or twice a year myself. Second, he was awful with money. He never saved. He borrowed from friends and family, racked up debt, and ultimately went bankrupt. But he told me, "Do as I say, not as I do." So I pay all my bills each month, and I've saved enough that I could retire early, probably. He also hoarded things without maintaining them. His house has significant damage, 4 busted cars out front, and tons of junk inside. We're going to be dealing with that next week. But he told me, "Do as I say, not as I do." So I take care of what I own, and I get rid of what I no longer need. Like any good father, he wanted a better life for his kids than he was able to get on his own. So by acknowledging his flaws to me, he made me a better man. So thanks, Dad. I'd like to close by sharing a list of 7 final tributes we've arranged for my dad, Mike Baldwin. Through my stories, you've maybe heard the context of why they're important. First, his obituary was published in the Palm Beach Post. Today's the final day. Get your Sunday paper. Why is that significant? It was the paper where his father helped print in the 60s. Following this service, he will be buried quite near his parents in the Royal Palm Cemetery, which you can see on the map included. Number 3, to get him settled in nicely with his new neighbors, we've sent flowers to the 4 surrounding grave sites. He was kind of a messy and loud neighbor, so I want to make sure to apologize in advance. Since he volunteered for so many toy drives over the years, we've donated $10,000 in his name to the Little Smiles local charity for toy drives. Number 5, since he loved watching rocket launches, we've arranged for a small sample of his DNA to be taken into Earth orbit next year, be launched from Kennedy. Yeah, some fans of that. Yeah. He would like that. Number 6, later today, you're welcome to join friends and family at Double Roads, the Jupiter location, which was one of his favorite bars. Nothing formal, just go there, have a drink, remember him. If you see anybody else here, say hi. 7, lastly, we have restocked his backpack, which he'll be buried with. And in that way, he can be prepared for the afterlife. So thank you.
Different now with all of your masks. Look at I looked, I'm like, that is not the same person that was sitting up here earlier. So I have to tell you, I've done well over 100 funerals, unfortunately, in my life because of what I do as a chaplain. That was awesome. This may not be the right word to use in a funeral setting, but that was awesome. That was very well thought out. I love the envelope. I want that one because I want to maybe win some money on Scratcher. But just so neat how you took all of those things and shared about your father. Thank you so much for doing that from your heart. We talked right before you got on the plane, Thursday night or whatever it was, and he was talking about what he was going to do, and I gave him some advice, but I don't think he needed it because he did a great job. But I feel bad for all of you because now I'm going to ask any of you if you have anything to say, and you're like, what do I say? But hopefully that triggers some thoughts in your mind about some things you might remember and some things that would be special to you. So, and I'm going to tell you, I am going to steal one of those things. When my parents go, I'm going to do the same thing for the surrounding neighbors because I want to make sure I think that is a really, really neat thing to do. That was, I almost laughed out loud on the back there. That was pretty funny. So anyway, and what I'm going to do is this. I know they're live streaming this. We're not going to take a microphone to you, but as you say something, I'll repeat kind of what it is in the microphone so that people that are watching out there can understand what you said. So I won't know your names or who's saying it. So for those who are watching, if it's something very inappropriate, you won't know who it is anyway. So, all right. So anybody, any like quick thoughts or adjectives or just things you remember, just shout it out. Who's going to be first? Go ahead.
So, something actually hilarious. He won, through a radio show, a couple tickets to a Grateful Dead show. On the radio.
He
I've
won,
never heard anything.
he won Grateful Dead tickets on the
He
radio.
did, and he gave it to me and my mom.
And he gave them away?
He went too, but
Oh, he went
that's
too.
that's upstairs.
So he went too. Okay, I just want to make sure everybody knows. He did go too. Okay.
Yeah.
He won good tickets to the Grateful Dead. You got to go. When was that? How long ago was that?
It was quite some time ago, probably like 2-3 years ago.
That only happens on television shows like
I know,
Seinfeld or something,
I know.
right? It doesn't, you know.
It actually inspired me to, keep an ear out on the radio.
You're on the radio. That's awesome. Who else?
I'll speak. He was a very good guy. I remember he had some issues. He went to a Bonnaroo in Tennessee. He got some trouble, so he had to go back. And he's like, nobody wanted to drive him. So her mom volunteered me to drive him all the way to Tennessee. Oh my God.
You drove him to Tennessee or you drove him back?
No, I drove him to Tennessee and back. And back. Okay, he is the worst backseat driver you've ever had.
So how many of you have experienced him as your backseat driver? Anybody in here? Okay, yeah. A few hands. Everybody else is going, thank goodness we didn't do that.
He made me laugh, and I got him through his little issue, and we had fun.
Good.
And it was great. He was a wonderful, wonderful gentleman.
Wonderful, wonderful man.
Yes.
Who else?
I've got one.
Go ahead.
I knew Mike from Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts. I have 2 Eagle Scouts, and that's how I met Mike. And ironically, I worked with his cousin Keith for over 20 years at the fire department. But Mike ran the food drive for our district for as long as I can remember. I started in 2006, and he was a sight to see. You pull up to the district meeting and you had that green Dodge van thing with all the mailers in the back and his maps all over the place, and no matter who you were or who came up, he knew exactly where you were going and how much food you got last year. And he was a very passionate man when it came to scouting. I wish I'd wore my uniform. I thought about it, but that's my memories of him. He was always very passionate about it, and he did a lot of good for our district. So thank you, Mike.
I won't repeat all that. You guys got to see him. So. but I heard your voice, and I'm like, I know that guy.
You do know me.
I worked with this guy at fire rescue. I'm a firefighter. I'm just saying fire rescue. So I heard his voice, and I went, I know that guy. I didn't see the mask.
We're all over the place.
The mask was off. I know. I saw a few people. The mask always messed it up. So I happen to be the chaplain for Palm Beach County Fire Rescue. So that's how I ended up getting to know all these people for the funerals, unfortunately. But yes, go ahead.
I knew Mike from both of his wives. We met at Suncoast back in probably about 1971. And like his son said, some of those fun days, we had way too much fun together. Moved away, and when I returned here 6 years ago, ran into him in Tonakita. The last 30 years, I've been very involved in Scouts. So when I came back here, I got re-involved, and for the past 6 years, we've been dealing on that level. So I have a lot of good memories of Michael from 1971 till just a couple months ago.
That's great. That's what we find a lot of times with these memorial services. You find the different compartments of your life and how they overlap, and getting to know people in different phases of their life. Who else? Anyone else? No pressure. Go ahead. Yeah, that's what I'm offering. Yes.
Sorry, I'm just trying to talk.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I met Mike, when I was 20 years old, and, he really took me in, took care of me like I was one of his own, and, he was just so good to me, and he showed me that there was more to life than just, what meets the eye. You know, there was so much more, and, he took me on this trip to Tampa. I like to sing, and he wanted me to try out for America's Got Talent, and we took his van, loaded up and everything. I drove up there. And it was just such an experience, and he was so joyful about it, and it really made him so happy that I could learn these things. That
He had a blast.
Yeah, he told us all
Talk about that, Honoroo.
he was so sweet. And he just always told me to follow my dreams, and I can do it. He
Yeah.
said, you can do it. You can do these things. And I just had never had someone in my life do that for me. So it was very touching, very heartwarming. Thank you so much.
I think that's why it's important for these stories to be shared, because what happens is you have your little story, you have your story, and then you get the family and go, oh yeah, we know about that. We heard about that. And you get to hear it wasn't just somebody acting, somebody really passionately sharing, and those are special times when somebody makes your life better because of what they pour into you.
Oh my gosh, he really did. I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for him. He was like my Mr. Rogers. He was.
I have to repeat that one. He said he was like her Mr. Rogers. That was
Yes. Always with the Santa Claus on his roof, on his dam.
Santa Claus.
Yeah, he had it strapped to his roof, and he drove it at the statue.
Santa Claus statue.
And when Christmas came, he'd take Santa Claus off. But all year long, you drive with Santa Claus on top
Oh,
of
so
the
hold
roof.
on. Let me get this right. So he had Santa all the year except for Christmas.
Except for
Okay.
Christmas.
Okay. That makes sense with everything else we're hearing today. Okay. It's all coming together.
It's still there, by the way.
It's still there. That's gonna be something else you gotta take care of this next week, Bob. So, yeah.
There's a discussion about the Santa.
Yeah, you guys are gonna have some fun discussions and conversations about all of this, and some decisions to make about on social media right away. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm his daughter, Ashley. Yeah, I'm related to the makeup story. I was in Girl Scouts. He made me do it. I didn't want to. And it was way less cool than the Boy Scouts, which I basically was also. But there was a mother-daughter makeup day, but my mom was a teacher and she was very busy working, and he went and he let me put makeup on him. Also, he was my #1 art fan. Like, basically my business is about to crash because I have a constant influx from the bar of new fans. Hey, I met your dad in a bar and I love your art now. I'm going to miss all those messages. He even printed my art page on the back of his business card so he can show people. Even right before I moved to Germany, I had an art show and I had gotten rid of all my stuff, and I mentioned to him in a phone call that I needed tables for my art show, and he drove like 2 hours and brought me someone else's tables for my art show. He didn't even tell me he was coming. He was the best dad, and I'm really going to miss him. I love him so much.
It seems like there's a good theme here.
Yeah.
Some of you care about other people. Whether you're a relative or not, you probably felt like one.
He made you feel like one. He really did. He took you, like Marky was saying, you know, he encouraged us younger ones, and like what's that famous saying? Do as I say, not as I do. He preached that to all of us, and you know, I was grateful to meet him. He took me in. I'm gonna miss him.
Anyone else?
He used to bring the music festivals.
Yes.
You know, you've never been to a real music festival unless you've gone to Bonnaroo. And then there was the Okeechobee Music
Yeah.
Festival. Oh, you haven't been to a music festival unless you've been to
And
Okeechobee. Well, I showed him up because I said, well, listen here, Mr. Mike. Me and my brother walked into Woodstock when I was 14 years old. We walked in, we didn't even have to pay. And I said, I've been to Woodstock. And I said, that's something you can't say.
That's pretty much the ultimate. That's the ultimate. The one up there. If you've been to Woodstock, I think you're probably good. So, well, I would encourage you to keep sharing these things. And what I would encourage you to do is, even when we're done here, don't let it stop. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit in this as part of the service. But as we kind of move into the next part here, I just want to remind you. I think you said it well. This is sad. No matter what else we say, this is sad, and that's why there's obviously Kleenexes in here. But there's also some fun stuff because it can be a celebration. You see, we've changed the terms and the titles and we've gone from funerals to memorial services to celebration of life and then we have different terms, right? I a few years back was asked to go out on a boat on the intercoastal to take the ashes for this family friend who they were going to take out, and family and friends were there. So I'm getting loaded onto the boat, and I see lots of coolers of adult beverages, and a lot of them. And they started drinking on the way out, and they said, what we want to do is we want to have a celebration. We got there, we're going to pour the ashes, and got permission at this point, blah, 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 blah. And on the way back in, it was a rather large, raucous party. And guess what? It was still sad. It doesn't change the sadness of it. And you see, there's a reason for that, because the Bible actually says, rejoice with those that rejoice and weep with those that weep. And in our culture, we're really good at rejoicing. Really good, right? You've probably done some rejoicing with Mike and probably with some others here about births, about anniversaries, about graduations, about birthdays, right? There's all kinds of things. Maybe your favorite sports team or whoever it is, you have a celebration. We're not so good at the weeping with those that weep because we go, oh, what do I do? There are people probably driving by here right now, seeing cars in the parking lot going, oh, right? Because when it's empty, okay, there's nothing bad happening over there now. But if you notice, even these funeral homes are now called event centers. You can actually reserve these places for things other than funerals, which when I first heard seemed really strange to me. it doesn't change the fact that sadness is there. There's a passage of Scripture that talks in Job, the life of Job. Job was the guy at the time who was the guy. Everybody knew who he was. He was the wealthiest. He was the most popular. He had a great family, like 14 kids, which more than you would have now. It's kind of a little more normal thing back then. But that was kind of one of the ways to show your status, right? And livestock and lands and all of this stuff. And basically in this long story of Job, all of it's gone within a matter of seconds. Like all of his servants come from all different directions and go, oh, bad news, bad news, bad news, bad news, done. And he sits on the ground. He doesn't know what to do because he's lost everything, his home, his kids, his livestock, his land, all of it gone. And there's a passage just after that, and it says that his 3 friends, and it says their names. We're not going to say what their names are because I can't pronounce them. There's some very unique names. But his 3 friends came and sat with him. And then it says, for the next 7 days and 7 nights, they sat with him and said not a word. And then here's the quote, because they saw that his suffering was too great for words. That's death. That's what death looks like. Because you see, funerals are for the living, not the dead. They're for us. Because for us, we have to be able to move on. We need comfort. We need hope. We need the purpose to move forward. We need to make it all make sense in our heads. And we understand that. These three gentlemen understood, I'm just here. And I want to encourage you that you can do that for each other. You don't have to sit on the ground 7 days and 7 nights with anyone, but you don't have to have the right words. It might be a hug. It might be a hand on the shoulder. It might be, oh, remember when Mike did this. That might be all it is. But that's how we can encourage each other, and that's how we weep with those that weep. That's how we do it. Because as you walk through this life, death is coming. Now, it's not something you have to fear and be scared of at every turn, right? But there's no way to get around it. It's coming. So the question that always comes is, what's left behind, right? I thought it was great, the illustration of the backpack and these envelopes, and that's a tangible thing to talk about. But it's so much more than that. And I got to tell you, I love that Bob talked about the vices and talked honestly about what those are and what he learned from them, and the fact that Mike made it a point to make sure life was better for his kids. That's what all of us want to do, because none of us are perfect, right? And I know that's the case no matter what goes on. And it helps us so much to be able to understand this is real life. So for us, legacy is what you leave behind. And it's more than a backpack. It's more than envelopes. It's more than vices. It's more than lessons learned. It's more than tributes. It's people. See, I learned years ago when I first started doing funerals, and the first couple of times I got up to do it, I'm thinking, what do you say? What do you say to people? And I remember legacy is a word that keeps coming up. And I, at the time, really thought legacy was an inheritance, an estate. You know, that's kind of what I thought legacy was, or your name on something. And my parents very quickly informed me there is no estate or inheritance, or I think the term was, we're going to make sure there's as little debt as possible. You're welcome. Something along those lines. We kind of laughed about it. That's not what it is, right? For the average person, it's not going to be some huge amount of money left behind. Legacy is people. Legacy is you. Legacy is us. And here's what I find. When I do funerals where it's real quiet and nobody knows what to say because we're here because we kind of have to be here, it's a little different than this environment, right? This is someone who was loved because he loved you. That's the difference. And let me tell you, as a person doing the funeral, when it's the other way, it's a whole lot harder because you're going, oh, I've got to get people to say something nice here. That's rough because people feel like they need to. You didn't have to do that because it's coming from your heart. It's because of an impact made on you, and that's the legacy. But the question I have for you that I have every time I do a funeral is, what is your legacy? Because you can't just wait till the end of your life and go, okay, here we go. Time to build my legacy. It's already started. It's already moved along however many years you've been on this earth. It's already moving along that path, and you have begun to develop your legacy. You've begun to make decisions and have a reputation that will be left behind. And the question I always ask is the one I ask myself, what are people going to say about me? Now, you can do what I did and type out what they're going to say about you. I gave it to my daughter. She laughed and said, I probably will not read that, but I was amazing. And I'm going to tell you right now, if she read it, it would be a great eulogy because I was awesome. And we laugh about it because I told her, I said, I want to be these things to you. I know I'm not all of these things, but I want to be these things, right? So we have a conversation about it. But the conversation about legacy starts with decisions and choices, and part of it is making the most of the moments. So I've been in the fire service for almost 18 years now, and these guys who've been in the fire service know there's moments where you run calls that you just wish you could unsee. And there's those moments where you're like, ugh, I don't know why I chose to do this. And I remember the first few times coming home, typically it's like a really difficult call with a child or something like that. And I remember coming home, and my daughter at the time was about 5 years old. I'd been in the fire service about a year, and I come in and I find her in her bed, and I just squeeze her. Just squeeze and hold on and hang on. And she's looking at me like, oh, okay, Dad, you know. And then she goes, what's going on? And I explained to her, I said, hey, had a difficult call, had a tough time, and you know, there was and I didn't get any details. I never wanted to traumatize her, but said, hey, there was a tough thing, and a child died, and so I wanted you to know I loved you. Happened a couple times, and it was a few months later. I come home from a difficult shift, and I give her a big squeeze, and she goes, what happened? And it crushed me, because immediately I went, wait, is the only time I'm doing this when something reminds me to do it and something bad happens? And I made it a point right then. I was like, no, I'm not doing this. I'm going to make it a point to, for no reason at all, hug, squeeze, love. Now, when she's a middle school, high school daughter, that was awesome, because then you just wait till the boy came around and you'd be like just holding on really, really tight. And she's looking at me like, you can stop now, Dad. This is getting embarrassing. All of those things. But it made it a point to go ahead and make those decisions. And what I figured out is it's helped me remember to make the right choices. For example, I actually drove here. I live here locally, but I actually drove here from Lakeland this morning because I made a decision. I was going to do this service, but I found out that my grandpa had decided at the last minute to come into town to visit my parents in Lakeland. So I'm like, I'm going. My wife is like, well, I can't go because she had work, and I go, no, I know, I got to go. I don't know how much longer my grandpa's going to be around. Guess what we did? We sat around, looked at each other, hugged him a couple times. We talked a little bit. We didn't do anything crazy. We didn't go bowling or anything, you know, we sat, and guess what? It was special. We had a good time. It'll be something I'll remember when he passes. I know that. If he passes before I do, that'll be a memory I have, because you have to make the most of the moments. You have to make the most of the moments. Don't wait for them, choose them, because here's what often gets said. You don't know the moment's special till it's past, right? And somebody gave me some really good advice about a year ago at this time. My daughter was about to get married, and my daughter years ago asked if I would do the service for her. I do weddings as well. And when she's 13 years old, you're like, yeah, sure, no problem. When she's 20, 21, 22, 23, and now she's getting married, you're like, oh, I've made a terrible decision. I really do not want to have to do this ceremony. I'm never going to make it through. So what we decided was I was going to walk her down the aisle. Grandpa was going to do like the first little 5-minute thing and do a little prayer, and then I was going to sit down, and then I was going to step up and do the service. Whew. Let me tell you, that was rough. It was special. It was amazing. But the advice I got about a month before she got married last year was a friend of mine who's a fire chief up in Wisconsin said to me, he goes, hey, enjoy that day. And I go, oh, yeah, I will. And he goes, no, I don't think you understand. He goes, when you're spending time in those moments leading up to the wedding and at the wedding, he goes, what I want you to do is this. When you think the moment has passed and you're about to walk away, hold on to the moment for like 10 seconds more. I go, well, what do you mean? He goes, he said, you guys are doing a first look with your daughter. He goes, when you hug her and it's time to let go of the hug, hang on to it for a little longer. When you're standing there holding her hand, looking at it for the picture, and it's done, and it's not, okay, it's getting awkward, I need to let it be awkward for another few seconds. I was like, what great advice for life, right? Okay, the moment's done, it's passed. No, it hasn't. I'm staying in this moment for a little longer. I think that's the kind of person that Mike was, just based on the little bit I've heard you guys talk about it today. It was hanging on to those moments. That's how you make the most of the moments, and that's how you develop the legacy. Because here's the deal. There's a passage in the New Testament that says there's a peace that passes understanding. And what I find is the peace comes, and I'm a person of faith, I believe it comes from God, but I also believe it comes from the comfort and hope you get from other people. And it comes from the memories. And it comes from sharing the memories. It's one of the reasons I like to do what we just did. Because I think you should do that the next few days and weeks. And I think what you should do is every time somebody else's name in here kind of comes into your brain, pick up the phone, shoot them a text about a story you remember. There's a reason their name came to your mind. Heaven forbid, you might actually write them a handwritten letter. I know that's, in today's society, how would we ever do that? Or stop by. Let them know you're coming by. Don't freak them out. But stop by and say hello, face-to-face time. Spend the moments. That is how I believe we develop our legacy, and that's how we honor his legacy. Because I think that's what he would do. I think that's what he did for you guys. Many of you have told stories about, and almost every one of those stories, if you really think about it, was about somebody who was a servant leader, somebody who sacrificed for other people, who said, I'm going to do what I don't need to do for me, I'm doing it for you. It's the theme of what I heard. So live that out. And the last thing I try to make sure people understand is this. Grieving is messy. Grieving is just a really messy thing. There's no way for me to stand up here and go, okay, for the next 3 days, here's what you can expect. And the next 6 days after that, here's what you can expect. And I'd be crazy to say that, right? We study in the fire service and the paramedic world about the 5 stages of grief. We talk about it all the time. And I tell people there's this 5 stages of grief and it goes like this, but it never goes like this. It goes like this. Oh, there's another one. And it might be for 10 seconds or it might be for 10 hours. You don't know. And the reason I say that is this. Grieving is messy and it's individual. So let people around you grieve the way they need to. You grieve the way you need to and encourage each other through it. Don't look at someone and go, they've forgotten about Mike. They're just not grieving today. And I'm torn up. Because guess what's going to happen the next day? They're going to be having a bad day. You're going to have a good day. And they're like, she's forgotten about Mike. And I see it happen all the time. So don't judge anybody. Let them grieve and just keep encouraging each other. Keep loving each other through this. Because this community here is here because of him. This group right here was not brought together for any other reason that you all were touched by Mike's life. You wouldn't be in the same room together right now if it wasn't the case. That's your common bond. Hold on to that bond. Encourage each other with it. I believe that's how we comfort, that's how we encourage, and that's how we live out legacy. I believe if we do that, we begin to build our own legacy. We get one day, hopefully many years from now, they're standing here talking about us, and they're saying, hey, think about what he did. Think about what she did and the impact they made on your life. That's what we can do. Let's pray. God, we thank you for the opportunity to share, the opportunity to love, the opportunity to encourage each other. Thank you for the stories that came to mind. I'm sure there are many people in here who were never planning on talking at all today, who heard something inside them say, yeah, that's the time to share it. And what a sweet moment for each of us to hear those things. I'm sure there's other things that have come to mind even since then. I pray to help each of us to encourage each other with those thoughts and those stories and those memories, and to love on each other these next few days and weeks and months to come as each person in here works through the process of grieving and just really tries to get past the hurt that's here, knowing that the life will never be forgotten, the person will never be forgotten, but hopefully the hurt that goes along with it is, and there can be joy, there can be laughter, there can be peace that comes when thinking about Mike and the impact that was made on them. We know you can help with that. We pray that each person here would do their part, and you just help us to be encouraged and comforted today. In your name we pray. Amen. That concludes the service. I believe is there going to be an announcement, I think. Yeah, you want to come up and make the announcement, I guess. So I'll have her make the announcement. Thank you so much for being here. I know I'm going to see, for those of you who are going to the procession, heading down to the funeral, I'll be there with you for the graveside, and we'll have some more announcements there as well. But